Chapter 1, General Knowledge. What do we mean to say what others hear us say? Everything in life is based on semantics. Words do not mean the same thing to everyone who uses them, but most people do not know this. That is why there is so much room for misunderstanding. The question, what do you mean when you say, is valid, but most people do not understand the need to ask it. Words can mean what we want them to mean. Words are imperfect tools to express ideas and emotions. I ask the reader to keep an open mind when reading the following pages. I have written this book in an intentionally redundant manner to approach the subject from different angles, hoping to fill in missing points. Huh? You talking to me? Let's define the players of this drama. What is a Chicano? Is that just a person of Mexican descent who was born in the U.S., or can it apply to those of Guatemalan or Salvadoran ancestry? And if you're only half Hispanic, are you still Chicano? What about Hispanic? Does that mean you have to be fluent in Spanish? What if you got a C- in Spanish class in high school? Does that matter? I sometimes fear the litmus test for membership into the club will be rolling the double R, something I myself cannot do, but I'm trying. In this book, I use Chicano to describe people of Mexican and Central American descent, raised in America and who have an affinity and identity with the Chicano culture. And I will make no attempt to explain what I think that means. Some people use the term Mexican American. I prefer Chicano, but I answer to many names. I often use Mex-Am for Mexican American, just to shorten words. I know many Chicano activists believe Hispanic deals only with Spanish, Portuguese, or Italian people, but I use it to describe Mexican indigenous folks, more so out of habit and ease of writing than any self-identifying purpose. I do believe we are indeed Mexica, but old habits take time to break. I know people from Central America are different from Mexicans. Puerto Ricans and Cubans are still another case, but I will lump everyone together for this discussion. If your parents are from El Salvador and you grew up here, I will allow you to be a Chicano. I believe the more members, the better. Chicano intellectuals, Chic-intels, are any Chicanos who agonize over the problems of our people. Ostensibly, politicians, labor activists, influential writers, and teachers of Mexican descent would fall in this category. Seeing how only 7% of Chicanos have a 4-year college degree or better, I see this as a small group. Illegal aliens, illegals, are the unlucky pioneers who have not secured legal status. I could call them undocumented, but illegal has a biting connotation that serves my purpose of distinguishing them from the other groups. Mexican immigrants, Mex-Ins, are the recent or long ago arrivals from Mexico or Central America. I find they share many common attitudes. Education, sophistication, education. The ability to read allows the development of the mind. The more confidence one has with reading, difficult text, and ease with the dictionary helps a person read more and become sophisticated. Education and life experience helps build sophistication. Think of a schoolboy who can barely read. He is unruly and lacks the foresight to value minding his teacher. If miraculously this student continues in school and improves his ability, he may appreciate education, though not that particular teacher. In spite of his intransigence, the student has learned to value education or knowledge. Education is necessary to acquire skills, but sophistication convinces us we need to acquire those skills. Education is necessary, but not sufficient. We need sophistication. Therefore, without sophistication, one would never progress to a point where they can make an intelligent choice. Sophistication helps us to master a field. In our struggle, sophistication allows us to grasp the severity and desperation of our plight. Otherwise, Mexicans remain locked in a fishbowl while the chance for liberation passes. Example, a Chicano with a minimum of education gets a good paying, low skill job. The work is hard, which convinces him he deserves the high pay and benefits. The job is scarce and secure, which convinces him he is lucky to have been hired, and that he must be special for having acquired it. If you tell him there is injustice in the world, that in general Mexicans are oppressed, and that we should work to stop it, he would probably argue that each man must help himself. I work hard to get where I am, and everyone else should too. The fallacy of this argument is obvious to everyone except this fellow. The fallacy of righteously judging the validity of a situation by its existence, the old only guilty people are arrested theory. This fool would say Mexicans are poor because they have not tried to get good jobs. We are poor because we have lousy jobs and therefore only need a better job to be rich. However, saying this does not make it happen. The fact of the deck being stacked against us as a community would not faze him. The existence of his success as the exception that proves the rule would go over his head. The tragedy here is that the one Chicano with the good job is positioned to help the rest, but he does not. So the poor remain poor, and this one lucky fellow feels more in debt to his benefactor, his oppressor. Constructive deception. We do this every day without calling it such. We don't know how to do something, so we sign up for lessons to learn how to do it. We start on a shaky basis, but convince ourselves we will be improving, and we do. Example, we decide to lose weight or exercise or start jogging. We join a gym and begin to learn a new skill or a new routine. At first, it's hard, but we tell ourselves we will get better. We continue trying, and we do improve. Of course, in the beginning, we are not very good at the new skill. That's why we are learning. But we do not stop. We continue, telling ourselves we should not be discouraged. Isn't that the exact process we do every time we try something new? Does this sound familiar? Or do you give up when you face difficulties? You try something once. If it doesn't work, then you give up? Do you only do the things you can already do? Maybe if your parents are rich, you can quit in the face of adversity, and your life will turn out okay. But if you are a typical Chicano, you cannot. Most people give up too easily. I know most Chicanos give up too easily. You don't believe me? Then why do 50% of Chicanos fail to get a high school diploma? You can argue those dropouts had good reasons, but it's just an excuse. They had to work to support their family. Yeah, right. They were discriminated against by teachers who actually expected them to do schoolwork. Their teachers lowered their self-esteem. They needed bilingual education, or they needed better bilingual education, or the ever popular, the girls got pregnant and dropped out of school. This always prompts the saying, Mexican girls don't get married, they get pregnant. See how good we are at making excuses? Como se dice el dicho, it is always easier to make up an excuse for why we didn't do a job right than it is to do the job right. Does all this offend you? Are you going to close the book and throw it away? Or maybe in the privacy of your own mind, you will agree and admit we have a problem. Maybe you'll agree to help solve those problems. So let's ignore the immediate reality that Mexican people, Chicanos, Mex-Ins, Hispanics, etc., are low income, poorly educated, jealous, beer swilling men with a paunch, and chubby women with lousy jobs. Let's remember the days when we lived in the presence of the gods, when Mesoamerica was a land of wonderful development. Sure beats living in the depressing present day. Most importantly, we are who we claim to be. Do you like what you see, or do you wish for more? I believe I am the descendant of kings, warriors, astrologers, mathematicians, and craftsmen. Aztlan spread from the North American Southwest through all of Mexico. More importantly, Anahuac incorporated Aztlan and much of Central America. Lots of work. We were a proud people with ties to diverse people across a continent. We can return to that glory. We chicken-tails are overwhelmed by the challenge, so we become disillusioned. We squander our life in passive aggression and sarcasm. We chick-in-tails have to take up the challenge of promoting our culture as a positive source of inspiration. Unfortunately, the huge bulk of poor, uneducated Mexican people weigh down the accomplishments of the few successful people. It's hard to talk of a positive Mexican culture with a straight face when reality is a blatant contradiction. Low expectations, self-hate because you're poor, drug abuse, alcoholism, and immediate gratification. These problems are not unique to Mexican people, but merely endemic to people trapped in the lower socio-economic stratum. The poor color the debate. It's hard to brag about the advanced Mexican civilization when contemporary Mexicans are dirt poor, but we are what we believe. The cliche about being poor or just broke is true. Describing yourself as poor means you see yourself that way. You accept the fact that you are inept, impotent, doomed to a life of poverty. Thinking of yourself as just broke acknowledges the temporariness of your situation. You are being realistic about your finances, but you are convinced things will improve. Maybe it's whistling in the dark, but at least you're being positive. Who knows? Maybe things will turn around. A society is the same. A society's myths are what makes and defines that society. Anglos believe the Europeans settled a wild country, conquered the Indians, survived harsh climates to tame a new nation. They get strength from these myths. If you don't believe me, just ask a recent immigrant from Asia or India or the Middle East. These new immigrants are convinced that the whites conquered a new world full of savages, swinging clubs and wearing animal skins. I've met foreigners who were frightfully ignorant that advanced Native American nations existed before the whites came. Too many people believe North America was a cultural wasteland full of half-human barbarians. So why not spread the idea that pre-Columbian America was a land of developed people who were not missing much from European civilization? It's true, and a hell of a lot better than what people believe now. No one told me. I have read some analyses by right-wingers of the immigration problem and the Reconquista of the Southwest. Some of the analyses are thorough and well-reasoned. I am left embarrassed because they seem to have a greater understanding and appreciation of the situation than I do. I have read analyses of how the darkening of America will change the character of America, how the spread of Spanish in the public schools, government offices, and workplaces will undermine the Anglo dominance. There is even a town in Texas that has declared Espanol the official language. It's not too surprising since it's close to the border and everyone in town is Mexican. This town is probably just a colonia, but the anti-Mexican Texans are in a furor over it. I am encouraged to hear all this fanfare. I did not know we were so well organized. I did not realize there was actually a plan in the works. No matter how you view these demographic changes, positive or negatively, they are occurring. Our numbers will grow, but I am not convinced we will, by numbers alone, create a new society that is better than we have now. Remember, for generations, the white minority in the country of South Africa controlled the black majority. Numbers do not mean everything. In any case, the march of history is like a parade. The bulk of participants move on with or without the occasional straggler. Each of us can participate or be left behind. Aslan is being rebuilt. The question is how to guide this procession. There is a new age dictum that we ultimately create the life we subconsciously desire. I have heard the human mind can focus on only one thing at a time. If we think negative thoughts, we edge out positive thoughts. If we obsess on just surviving, then we leave no room for prospering. I believe this is the problem. I have heard Hispanic educators cite sports as a way to reach young people, to get the message across. But aside from the obvious, don't do drugs or stay in school, I wonder, what is the message? When I tell Chicano teens to stay in school, I want them to help me retake Aslan. Just telling a young, vibrant person to finish their high school diploma is setting their sights far too low. How can they get excited about it? I've known Chicano teens who swear once they graduate high school, they will never go to school again. I believe them. Hispanic parents who do nothing to guide their children's education will be relieved if the kid graduates high school. They will proudly display their children's graduation picture atop the family color television as the greatest achievement of life. For most of those teens, it will remain their highest accomplishment. Having reached such success, these Chicanos will never do anything else. In their minds, they have done all they set out to do. With all the potential of youth, they will shuffle off to dead-end jobs and a mediocre existence. The born-again Christians have the right idea. They believe something big is coming. They are constantly preparing for the future. They have group leaders, mentors for newcomers, Bible study, and discussion groups to plan for the big event. How many Chicanos have a library of pre-Columbian books? How many of us encourage and patronize a Chicano intellectual subculture? We say our youth should be proud of being Mexican, but do we actually encourage them? There is too much lip service and not enough in-service going on. I've heard by the year 2050, America will be made up of a majority of minority people. How many of us are preparing for that day? But will they listen? People with low self-esteem and little education feel threatened by the outside world. Seeking to protect themselves, they go on the attack and project their unease in a belligerent attitude. They try to hurt others before they are hurt. The cure for low self-esteem is knowledge. The way to solve a problem is to acknowledge it, study the cause, and act to resolve that problem. To do this, one must be mature enough to look at the harsh realities of life. The problem is the Chicano Mex-Im community lacks the guidance to do this. A legacy of poverty and ignorance conspire with our oppressors to keep us stuck in the cycle of poverty. One cannot respect themselves if they have not accomplished anything. The problem is, many Chicanos give up on themselves far too early. I know 19-year-olds who insist they cannot learn algebra. Often teachers, parents, and adults in general let young Chicanos off the hook. Adults have to be a good example by displaying discipline. Overweight, alcohol, and drug abusing adults who use too much profanity and who are stuck in dead-end jobs send the wrong messages to our young. We need to lead so they will follow. Most importantly, Mexican people do not cooperate well. We do not like to follow others. We are a jealous people. This is the result of poverty. Slavery leads to short-term goals. Therefore, to get ahead, we need a multi-pronged attack plan where everyone can be a leader, a cell of one, where everyone can be a leader, loosely united, moving in the same direction. Today, we see Anahuac is divided into Central America. Many people from these countries will at first refuse to join us because they think they are substantially different. We must remember the original nation of Aztlan included diverse groups of indigenous people. The pre-Cortez world of Anahuac reached from the Isthmus of the Southwest of North America. We should think of our nation as this huge block of land and this wonderful group of human potential. Your Tio Samuel wants you. We have to take responsibility, both individually and collectively. The truth is, Mexican people do not work well in groups. Mexican people are not joiners. I do not foresee a national organization that we can join, turn on the automatic pilot, and conveniently follow. No monolith group exists that we can mail an application and a check to, maybe read the quarterly newsletter, and then expect this group to solve all of our problems. We must realize our power to affect change and our limitation to do so. Life is full of contradictions. We individually have the power to promote positive Mexican qualities. We individually can study pre-Columbian civilizations, learn Spanish and Nahuatl, learn and preserve folk dances, cooking, medicinal herbs, etc. Yet we cannot on our own do everything. No one can do everything, but everyone can do something. No one can do everything, but there is no one who cannot do something. Read that sentence over again, will you? New Aztlan will be made of millions of Mexicans and Chicanos struggling to build a place for themselves. Our nation lives as long as we believe in it. Conversely, Aztlan is dead as long as we think it is only make-believe. As long as we think it has no vitality nor reason to exist. End of chapter 1.